first like to say how delighted I am to have been asked by Adele to share with you some feelings and thoughts and remembrances of Kitty Davy. Kitty Davy had this incredible quality of endearing herself immediately to anybody who met her. And so, in an air of humility, I would like to say that the things that I want to share with you is really a sharing. Because anytime somebody talks about Kitty, it immediately brings up those personal memories. If you met her once or you met her 1,000 times, then she cut her honesty as a human being, her honesty as a personality was so great that you immediately felt not only at home, but you felt like you were in the presence of an old friend. So I will be successful in talking about Kitty if you feel, get in touch with that amazing quality she had. I'd like to start off by reading a quote from Baba that was one of Kitty's favorite quotes. And then we'll go from there. MeherBaba said, "I am ever conscious that I am in you, but you are never conscious that I am in you. Daily I support you and share your consciousness. Now I want you to uphold me, so that one day you may share in my consciousness." MeherBaba. It's very difficult for me to talk about Kitty because, in a way, because she was and is so much a part of my life that it's sort of like talking about your hand, or you know what I mean? It's a but I'd like to also start off by reading some excerpts from a talk that Charles Haynes gave at Kitty's service. Most of you know that Kitty passed away on December 3rd of 1991, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. But let me read to you from this and to get us in the proper mood. These are excerpts from this talk. What made Kitty unique? Just say Kitty at any gathering of MeherBaba's family in any part of the world, and the smiles break out, the stories begin, as everyone eagerly shares Kitty's advice, Kitty's words of wisdom, or the latest Kittyism. Through it all, of course, Kitty remained oblivious to just how special and how truly great she was. There was no doubt, that was no doubt because in the depths of her being, she knew that it was not she who was special or great. It was, is, and always will be the divine beloved, and he alone. In the words of Kitty's very favorite lines from Scripture, "I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me." For us, gathered here on this occasion, and for all who join with us around the world, this means that today we celebrate not Kitty, but the living Christ. Without him, Erich reminds us, we are worthless. With him, we are priceless. The life of Kitty Davy was and always will be a beautiful, joyous, priceless message of love from the beloved, the divine beloved, who lives and dwells in every heart. The specialness that was Kitty was born of her surrender to MeherBaba, thus becoming, without even knowing it, a living example of the way of perfection. Perhaps that is why dearest Mani could write to Kitty while looking at a picture of Kitty with Baba in Venice and say, "Seeing Baba and you in this picture made my heart say, this is a picture of God's perfect love for a perfect disciple." Each day with Kitty was a new life, a new opportunity to serve. And those of you who did know her personally know that service was our watchword. And if there might be, even for a brief moment, nothing to do, Kitty would find someone who needed something or some task that needed doing. At the close of each day, Kitty had lived a full life, all for him, all for others, or in the words of Baba's she loved so much, for the one in the many. She had ample time for everyone and everything because she had so little need to have time for herself. She was there for everyone, she belonged to everyone because Kitty was there for him alone. She belonged only to her beloved. Through the example of Kitty's life, Meher Baba beckons each of us forward in the way of perfection. He demonstrates that it is possible to be alive with the Spirit of God in all that we do. This path, as Francis Brabazon has said, is the path of self-forgetfulness and beloved alone remembrance. This is the path that ends only when we are not and God alone is. Ultimately, Baba tells us that this is what it means to become perfect in his love. When Meher Baba placed Kitty at the Meyer Spiritual Center 40 years ago, he told her, "I will send for you one day." That day has come, but this does not mean that our time with Kitty has ended. It has only just begun. For where is Kitty now but where he is? And he is here, he is with us now and always. Then Charles ends by saying, "Can't you just imagine Kitty now, close in beloved Baba's embrace? Isn't that his beloved Meher at his side, smiling warmingly and lovingly? Nearby are old friends Elizabeth, Narina, and there are Rano and Margaret awaiting their turn to greet Kitty. All are together, joined as one with him, each a perfect example of his perfect love. Look, they are beckoning to us, calling us to our true destiny, to join their company and be united with him forever." So, I met Kitty Davey in 1967 when I first came to the Meyer Spiritual Center. And actually, in those days, one didn't see much of Kitty. You saw more of a blur of Kitty. She was 77 years old. She was taking care of Ruth White, who was a rather large woman who was about 100 years old. She was taking care of Elizabeth Patterson. She was taking care of a menagerie of animals in the house because Elizabeth Patterson had a great love for animals and she had plenty of them. It included a turtle named Jimmy and a dog named Beauty and cats and God only knows what else. Also, for those of you who were in the center in those days, in the late 60s and early 70s, there were only 3 people really operating the center. There was Frank Eaton, and then there was an assistant, and then there was Kitty. So Kitty was cleaning cabins, and she was doing all sorts of other things, and running a bookstore, and taking care of all these people, and greeting people. So when I say that in those early days, you did get a chance to see Kitty, but Kitty was moving very quick at 77. I came to work at the center in 1969, and to give you an example of Kitty's presence at the center, I would walk into the center and there would be piles of Spanish moss along the paths, or piles of twigs. Kitty would have, when she had nothing else to do, would go into the center, and she hated Spanish moss. She thought it was choking the trees. So she'd be leaping up and grabbing it and piling it. And she'd be piling twigs because, they looked, this was Baba's center. Incredible, absolutely incredible. When Adele asked me to talk a little about Kitty, for us all to remember her, she said, Kitty really loved your music, and I must say that for some reasons that I don't understand, there was a very deep connection between Kitty and myself in regards to music. Most of you know that Kitty was a very fine musician, a very trained musician. And I'm quite the opposite of that. But Kitty's passion, of course, was for Meher Baba, but her passion was also for music. And even towards the last, Kitty got ill in January of 1991 and was hospitalized. And that's a whole story into itself. She actually passed away 3 times that I know of at that time. She would pass away, and then she'd come back to life, or the doctors would come out of her room and say it would be just a matter of a day or 2 now, you know. But she recovered, and she didn't like the hospital at all, and who could blame her? But when she came back to live at Del Ruba, in a weakened condition, I would say that 75% of the concerts that he gave at the center, Kitty would go to in that condition. She would be wheeled in or carried into a chair. Very touching for me, personally. In fact, earlier, before she got ill, Kitty was sort of like my manager. She would come to these concerts, and then she would count, she'd do a head count. And she'd lean over to me, she'd say, "Ooh, there's 25 people here tonight." And then at the end, and at the end of the music, she'd call me over and she'd say, "You know, you only made 2 mistakes tonight." Or sometimes she would say things like, I remember, this reminds me, she said, she was talking to somebody, because I had favorite songs, and I thought she had favorite songs, so I would sing them over and over again, you know, every time I'd give a concert. And I overheard her say something to somebody like, "Oh, Jim, he only knows 16 songs." Yeah. To give you, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit because I'm sort of didn't want to mentally prepare for this. I wanted to sort of like just let it happen. I wanted to share a few personal things. When Kitty was in the hospital for the first time and she was failing, there was an extraordinary number of people who would be coming from across the country, and indeed some people from out of the country would be coming, and basically were camping out at the hospital. People who were taking care of Kitty at one time told me there were over 100 people just waiting around the hospital, which the hospital people were, you know, amazed, you know, and in cases appalled by. But this personal connection that she established with everybody who knew her was so natural. You just wanted to be around Kitty, and especially when she was not feeling well. And when I went to see her the first time, I walked into the room, and Sheila Krinsky was there, and there was some one other person. And she was sort of like in a coma, they said. You know, Kitty's in a coma. She hasn't talked for a couple of days, and she's failing, you know. So I went in there to say my goodbye, and I leaned over the bed. And she opened her eyes and she said, "Sing to me." And like everybody is like, "What?" And like I was so choked up, I just couldn't. I did sing, but it was like, this is amazing, you know. I don't even remember what I said. I don't even remember where I was, and it was like that. And she was doing that. She did a lot of that for people. You know? Then she'd go back into these states, and she wouldn't, for a couple of days, that she would not be conscious. And some dear friend would walk in, and she would just carry on a conversation and go back. When she left the hospital, that reminded me of another sweet thing that somebody told me about. When she left the hospital and was recuperating at Del Ruba, I called up and I said, "Do you think Kitty would like some music?" And they said, oh, she would love some music, come on over, So I drove over and I sang for Kitty. And she would nod off. When I would sing, she would nod off. This one time, I think she nodded off for about 25 minutes. And we waited, when she opened her eyes, we continued to sing, And later somebody told me, when they told Kitty I was coming over, she said, ooh, quick, get my makeup, get my rouge. I'm really telling you this just because it's so delightful, And that on a number of occasions I've been told that when she heard that I was coming over to sing, she'd get dressed up and dolled up. Isn't that sweet? When Kitty was failing in health at that time, of course she passed away in December, so this was about 11 months before, but when I got a phone call after she had been in the hospital for a while, and it was from one of the members of the Meyer Spiritual Center board, Joe Harmon, who's an attorney, and he wanted to meet with me, and he said, look, I want you to be aware of the fact that Kitty Davey has put you in charge of her funeral. She had requested for you to organize her funeral when she passes away, which was a shock to me. She said, I don't want anybody talking about me, I just want music. And then I got a phone call saying, from Charles Haynes saying, well, it's just a matter of a day or two, so let's get this thing organized. And it really made me nervous because I did not want to face the idea of Kitty passing away. And also I knew that she was recovering all the time. I'm mentioning this to you because of what happened when Kitty finally passed away. I was going through a crisis situation in my life last year, and reached a point in which I had to go to India. I was drawn to go to India. And Kitty's health was fine, so I didn't consider any problem with that. Excuse me. I mean, her health she was being driven around, and she would come to the center and stuff like that. So I went off to India in November. And about a week and a half after I was in India, or 2 weeks after I was in India, or 3 weeks, we got the word that Kitty passed away. Which struck me because I was well aware that I had been asked by Kitty to be in charge of her funeral. And I also was struck with the fact that there I was at MeherBabaLibrary. So I just immediately went up the hill and sang one of Kitty's favorite songs a cappella in the tune. And when I got back, the residents had been organizing 7 garlands of roses and flowers, and Ted Judson was there and everything else. So basically, I feel in my heart that I was, in a sense, in charge of Kitty's funeral, but it just happened to be at MeherBabaLibrary in beloved Baba's tomb, which was a beautiful ceremony in which Kitty's memory was, all the songs that she liked was sung before Arti. There was Arti, then we all placed all these garlands on Baba's tomb in Kitty's memory, and also on Meher's tomb. And then, of course, we finished by singing some of the songs that I remember. And when I got back from India, I was shown the program for Kitty's funeral in Myrtle Beach. And most of the songs the vocal songs that we did in India were in that ceremony, with very little communication between the two of us. So I'm sure Baba, in his extraordinary love for Kitty Davey, made sure she got the best of both places and worlds. Sure. In fact, I'm going to sing some for you. So, but I'm going to actually, I'm glad you asked that, because this will give you an idea. All of these songs and selections were either chosen by Kitty in comments, like she would say to somebody who was with her, who was into classical music, listen, when I pass away, play that. Or I love that, I'd like to have that at my funeral. For those of you who are classical musicians, this will mean a lot more than it means, some of these selections. But it would start off with Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings. It was followed by R. Vaughan Williams's Fantasia on a Theme of Thomas Tallis, which was followed by J.S. Bach's Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. Then the Master's Prayer was read, the Australian arty. A Welcome by Charles, and then Precious Lord, Take My Hand, which was always a favorite of Kitty's. And then a song I'll sing for you in a little while, I Found a White Dove, which was the song that I sang a cappella in the tune. The melody by David Miotke. She had a great love for the David Miotke's music, and especially the East-West Gathering, which I personally feel is, if not the finest, one of the finest pieces of devotional music to Baba ever written. Then a song that Kitty liked of mine, I Will Never Leave You. Then a poem by John Milton on his blindness, which she knew by heart. And it was read by Lois Brager, who knew it by heart, and they used to recite it together. Then a cable was read out from the Meherzad family. Then some of Baba's words were read. And then another one of my songs, All the Way. Then some reflections by Charles Haynes again. Some excerpts from a talk that Kitty gave to you all, actually, on consciousness, which was a theme that she loved very much. And then it was finished by Begin the Begin. Personally, I feel that Kitty wanted no words at her funeral. So the funeral in India had no words except for the words that directed to the praise of her beloved, the Master's Prayer, the Prayer of Repentance. But having read this prepared document of some of the talks that were given, I'm sure she was very pleased by what Charles had to say. It was beautiful. This was the cable that was sent from the Mandali on December 3rd of 1991 when they heard of Kitty's passing. We salute our most precious Kitty, Saroja, which was the name that Baba gave her, the oldest disciple of the Ancient One. Her lotus pure reflection of beloved Baba's love will continue to shine at his home in the West and in the hearts and lives of his many lovers who are enriched by the example of her life for her beloved Lord and Master, Avatar Meher Baba. Okay. One of the things that I used to love to do for Kitty was we would celebrate her birthday every year. I think it started around 88, 90. I think it might have been she probably allowed it to happen at 90th birthday, assuming she didn't have long to go, So every year I would do I would write a song for Kitty's birthday, or I would do something outrageous. I did a lot of stand-up stuff. Not as good as Michael Campagna or some of your other people, but in its own humble way, I remember one year I decided that the only thing that could top some of the stuff that had been done the previous years was to get Walter Witkowski, Marshall Hay, and myself dressed up in tuxedos, dancing with top hat, tails, and canes, singing "You're the Tops." I wish I had the words that we made up some words as we went along. And if any of you have ever heard Walter Witkowski sing or Marshall Hay dance, it was anybody here in the audience for that? Then words do not fully express the amazing Walter Wachowski actually could probably give Jack Small a run for his money. But what I would like to do for you is the last birthday song I did for Kitty, okay? And because the other ones, I don't know what's ever happened to them. They were just for one, you know, for one night only. Some of you, actually, they made a videotape of Kitty, and this was sort of being sung in the background. What I try to do is take quotes from Baba, or you know, and sort of weave them in to, or statements like "Don't worry, be happy" or "O Parvati Gar," and sort of put it into a song for Kitty. By the way, one year I read out fake Western Union telegrams from people from all over the world for Kitty, you know, like. Yeah. Frank Sinatra, you know. Kitty baby, you know, and all that. Richard Nixon said, "Happy birthday, Kitty Davy, I am not a crook." Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Kitty Davy's 100 today. Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai. And she's looking much better than you or I. O Parvati God, the preserver of all, you've certainly preserved the best of your call. Being without beginning and without end, you've given us more time with Kitty to spend. So Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Kitty Davy's 100 today. Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai. And she's looking much better than you or I. Don't worry, be happy, 'cause Baba is here. He's beaming his love to his kitty so dear. Thank you, sweet Baba, for your Saroja. Everyone here is so blessed to know her, singing Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Kitty Davy's 100 today. Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai. And she's looking much better than you or I. So help us, dear Baba, to love you more and still more, and hold your Dhamma no matter the score, and give for dear Kitty good health and good cheer, 'cause we can't wait to celebrate her birthday next year. Oh, Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Kitty Davy's 100 today. Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai. And she's looking much better than you or I. This is known as the Kitty Davy cheer. Om Pada Brahma, Pada Madma. Who's the gal we're all crazy for? Izad, Yezdan, Ahura Mazda. It's Kitty D, ra ra ra. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Kitty Davy's 100 today. Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai. And she's looking much better than you or I. I made little notes here. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about was and how sweet Baba was in this. When I went to India this last time, and before Kitty passed away, I just felt I just had this thing that I wanted to do something unique and special for the mandali. And what do you do for the mandali? I mean, really, that's unique and special. I guess for Erich, being something unique and special is just sing or talk or something, so he doesn't have to do it for that afternoon, you know. But And being a connoisseur of fine Indian cuisine, I was checking out some of the new restaurants in Ahmednagar, of which, if you haven't been in Ahmednagar for the last few years, there's some really good ones that have come up. But that's another story. You can talk to me later about that. But I went to this one place that had apparently a very fine gourmet chef who cooked Chinese food. And it was really wonderful. And I thought, well, what a great idea. What I'll do is I'll invite the Mandali to dinner. And I had this vision, you know, I'd invite all the women Mandali and all the men Mandali, and they'd get dressed up in their suits and they'd come out to the restaurant. But of course, I knew that wasn't possible. So I made mention to Mani. I said, look, this is something I would like to do. I'd like to buy dinner. And I know you're not going to be able to come out to dinner, so let me just bring it out to you. And surprisingly, she said yes. And the next day, Kitty passed away. And I had arranged for this dinner 2 days later. And so obviously, it was very clear that those of you who knew and spent some time with Kitty, Kitty loved to go out to eat. She loved to dress up. She used to love to sit in a chair that faced people coming into the restaurant. Always wanted to see everybody and everything that was going on. It was just a joy for her. And she also would have a cigarette once in a while. She used to smoke like this. In fact, a few months before she passed away, she took us all out to lunch, to Latif's, which was her favorite restaurant. She was very, very close to Razi and Marshall. And she sat in there and she asked for someone who had a cigarette, and she just popped two puffs and put it out. You know, never. I mean, it was just the idea of it. Anyway, it just became very clear to me that this was Kitty and Baba getting the idea of a fancy meal to Meherzad, so that Kitty could, you know, like enjoy watching everybody eat well. That's what Kitty really enjoyed about going out to eat, was to see other people eating well and having a good time and conversation and activity and energy and love and all of that. So it was very sweet. It was a moment. And so I went to the restaurant, and I got being you know, a good hearty eater, I figured, well, there's about 15 Mandalis, so I'll get X number amount of food, which turned out enough for 3 days. It was a 7-course meal, you know, and it was like in these huge tubs and everything else, and delivered it at the kitchen there on an off day, and told Katie that this was in memory of Kitty, and that everybody, and all the members of the Mandali and everybody who worked there and everything, this was their food and to enjoy. And it just turned out, you know, there are times when we try to do for Baba, and it always turns out at the end perfectly fine. But in the meantime, sometimes there are some hitches that occur. There was not a hitch involved in this. I mean, to the point of getting to the restaurant in a rickshaw, and the food was ready. Okay, this is a miracle. The amount of the tubs that whatever they call it, those aluminum, I had just exactly the right number. They filled exactly to the top. They fit just exactly in the seat. I mean, it was just extraordinary, you know. And the meals were. It just all worked out perfectly. And then I delivered it on time, just when they wanted it. You know, the rickshaw driver actually got up the hill right. And I mean, my life's been hell since, but I mean, the meal was spectacular. So I want to thank Baba publicly for that sweetness for Kitty. And one other thing I'd like to say, and then I'll stop talking and sing a few songs that Kitty loved. This was very, very unusual. I don't want to get into the details of it, but I was experiencing one of those states in my life that we all seem to be going through. And if you haven't, trust me. as Jack would say, Baba has some special love for you. I was in this state that was really pretty intense, almost catatonic actually at one point. And sort of towards the end, and this was about a week before I went to India, I got a telephone call. Now Kitty at this point was her health was not good, but it was stable, but she wasn't seeing too many people. I mean, it was just too much. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and she said, I just had to call you up to tell you that I've had a dream of Kitty, and that in the dream, at the end of the dream, Kitty said that I sat just shortly before I went to India. And I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but because it was very, very personal. But the message that Kitty, I feel very strongly that Kitty was giving me a message, that it was not of this, that some of the message was not of my knowledge of this plane, but of old connection that I've had with Kitty Davey, and which shed light on something that I was personally going through. And it was so moving, and it was so extraordinary. And it dawned on me that one of the things that Kitty was very upset at during the last few months of her life was not that she was physically suffering, and she, by the way, suffered an incredible amount towards the end. Much more than a lot of you people realize. It was not that, but she was upset that she couldn't do the work. And she would tell the people who were helping her that that was what was bothering her, that she felt not useless, but felt she couldn't do the work. And that's what she was always, she was a worker. She was like this extraordinary worker. And Baba put her in a position where she was dependent on other people. And that was probably the last sanskara that would go from Kitty Davey, the last one. So even here, even in her infirmary, something was going on because of my connection with Kitty, that she wanted to pass on a message to me in such a manner that it would profoundly affect the state that I was in, and it did. Last thing I would like to say, because I had forgotten this. My relationship with Kitty, aside from the music, was as a worker. When I came to the center to work in 1969, that's what I did. I did not have personal interviews with Kitty. I generally avoided them. That was just my nature. It was much easier for me to make a bed or sweep a pathway or be a night watchman than to worry about my spiritual status. And Kitty responded that way. I mean, basically, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to work. The first thing I would do, you'd love this, she had a dog, and the dog's name was Beauty. Ugliest dog you ever saw. Its dog was ugly. And ugly and old and stinky. Smell, ugh. And if Kitty Davey wasn't paying attention to this dog, it would bite her. Kitty kept the dog celibate, too. So my job in the morning was the first thing to do was to feed this dog a heartworm pill, which means I had to open its mouth and shove a pill down its mouth. This dog did not like me. I would also have to bathe the dog once a week and then take it out for a walk. So anyway, that was my initial relationship with Kitty, but I just want to pass this on. I see I didn't think I could do 45 minutes, and I'm almost over the time already. One day I was sitting in Kitty's office, and the atmosphere was very light. We were talking about this or that or something on it. And all of a sudden, I'm not mystically inclined, but the atmosphere changed dramatically in the office. And Kitty just looked straight at me. And I was smart enough to know something was coming. And she looked at me and she said, "Are you happy?" And I said, "No, not particularly." And she said, "Well, do you try to remember Meher Baba all the time?" And I said, "No." She said, "That's your problem." And then she said, "Do you try to please Meher Baba all the time?" And I said, "No." She said, "That's your problem." And then she said, "I have to get the phone," and she left. And I was sitting there in that office like this. Now, if somebody else had said that to me, I probably would have been arrogant enough to not listen. But because Kitty Davy was saying it to me, and she was saying it to me in a unique way that she normally would not talk to me, I realized two things. One, she was absolutely right. And two, she represented somebody who could say that. Because of all the people that I've ever met on this planet, except for a few in India, but I would say even them, for me personally, nobody ever tried to please Meher Baba or remember him all the time and succeeded like Kitty Davy. Jai Baba. I'd like to do a white dove and another song and then one other thing. Okay. If you know the song, please sing along. This is a particular favorite. I found a white dove, as white as the foam on the blue Pacific wave. I made him a golden cage for his home, so that he would never leave. A golden cage for my dove, white as foam on the blue Pacific wave. A beautiful cage, so he would not roam, and I, his dear sight, should have. My lovely white dove his bright feathers shed, and sang his sweet song no more. My joy and my love fell and lay as one dead, and so I opened the door. My lovely white dove fell and lay as one dead, because he was wounded sore. His breast was crimson from where his heart bled, and so I opened the door. My lovely white dove arose with a cry and sped like a shaft of light. O beautiful dove, return from the sky and comfort me with your sight. Return, oh return, my love from the sky, for you are my whole delight. Return, oh return, with your sweet glad cry, and comfort me in my night. Return, oh my dove, and pluck out the dart of love, or else I must die. Return, oh my love, for I've made my heart pure space in which you can fly. Return, oh my love, for to be apart
means I must surely die. Return, O my dove, to the sky of my heart. There you can in freedom fly. O Meher, my love, my soul.
I'd like to finish with the song I thought about when I heard that Kitty Davy passed away.
The sun is out, the sky is blue. There's not a cloud to spoil the view, but it's raining, raining in my heart. The weatherman says clear today. He doesn't know you've gone away, and it's raining, raining in my heart. Oh, misery, misery. What's gonna become of me? I tell my blues they mustn't show, but soon these tears are bound to flow, 'cause it's raining, raining in my heart. Oh, misery, misery. What's gonna become of me? I tell my blues they mustn't show, but soon these tears are bound to flow, 'cause it's raining, raining in my heart, raining in my